Lila and Arjun had been married for 10 years. Their life seemed perfect from the outside. A beautiful home, successful careers, and 2 lovely children. But beneath the surface, their relationship had grown cold. Conversations were transactional. Intimacy was rare, and they drifted further apart with each passing year. Lila, a marketing executive, found solace in her work. She often stayed late at the office, pouring herself into campaigns and meetings. During one such late evening, she met Rohan, a charming new colleague. He was attentive, funny, and genuinely interested in her thoughts. Over time, their professional relationship became personal. Rohan's compliments and playful texts filled the emotional void she hadn't realized she carried. Arjun, meanwhile, buried himself in his own distractions. An IT consultant, he frequently traveled for work. On one of his trips, he reconnected with Mira, an old college friend. What started as friendly catch-ups evolved into something deeper. Mira, too, was in a strained marriage, and they bonded over their shared frustrations. Texts turned into calls, and calls led to stolen moments during his trips. Both Lila and Arjun noticed subtle changes in each other, but avoided addressing them. Lila began dressing up more often, claiming it was for office meetings. Arjun became more secretive with his phone and spent longer hours away. Their mutual neglect allowed their individual transgressions to flourish. One evening, Lila was at a cafe with Rohan, laughing and sharing stories, when she saw a familiar figure in the corner of her eye. Her heart sank as she recognized Arjun sitting at a nearby table with Mira. Their eyes met, and the realization hit them both like a tidal wave. The ride home was silent. Words failed them as they processed the betrayal on both sides. When they finally sat down, the conversation was raw and painful. They accused, cried, and confessed. But amidst the anger and tears, they admitted their shared responsibility for letting their marriage fall apart. Lila and Arjun decided to seek counseling, not to erase what had happened, but to understand why it did. The process was slow and challenging, forcing them to confront their individual flaws and unmet needs. Slowly, they began rebuilding trust and rediscovering each other. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but a real and honest attempt at healing, one step at a time. Rebuilding their marriage was far more difficult than either had anticipated. The trust they had shattered couldn't be repaired with mere apologies or promises. The wounds were deep, and forgiveness felt elusive. Their counselor encouraged them to delve into the root causes of their infidelity, a process that required brutal honesty. Lila admitted she had felt invisible for years. The absence of affection and acknowledgement from Arjun had made her crave validation elsewhere. Arjun, in turn, confessed that he had felt trapped in a routine where he was always providing but never appreciated. Both realized they had stopped communicating long before their betrayals began. They started small. They agreed to set aside one evening every week for just the two of them. No work, no kids, no distractions. Those evenings were awkward at first, filled with uncomfortable silences and guarded conversations. But over time, they began to talk like they hadn't in years. They shared their fears, dreams, and even their guilt. There were setbacks. Old wounds resurfaced during arguments, and the temptation to walk away was strong. Lila would sometimes catch herself comparing Arjun's words to Rohan's easy charm. Arjun, too, struggled with letting go of the comfort Mira had offered. But they chose, day by day, to focus on each other. One day, during one of their planned evenings, Arjun surprised Lila with a heartfelt letter. In it, he described how he had fallen in love with her all over again. Not with the woman she used to be, but with the resilient and complex person she had become. Lila was moved to tears. For the first time in years, she felt seen and valued. In turn, Lila began expressing her appreciation for Arjun in small ways. She left him notes on the kitchen counter, thanking him for his efforts. She planned a surprise trip to a place they had always talked about visiting, but never had. Slowly, those gestures began to mend the fragile bond between them. Months turned into a year. While they couldn't erase the past, they learned to live with it. The scars of their betrayal became reminders of what they had overcome together. Their relationship was far from perfect, but it was real, built on the hard-earned lessons of forgiveness, vulnerability, and a shared commitment to love again. Lila and Arjun weren't the same people they had been when they first met, and neither was their marriage. But in the end, that was what saved them. They had rediscovered each other not as the idealized versions they had clung to, but as flawed, evolving individuals who chose to stay together.